Hi guys, BuildZoid here, and welcome to the second weekly HWbot score roundup, and it's already late. Like, it was supposed to be posted Sunday night, and it is Monday morning, but yeah, anyway. There's been some awesome scores posted to HWbot last week, so let's go through them, and yeah, just take a look at what people have been doing. So the first score we're going to be taking a look at is Max from Hardware Numbers, that's his YouTube channel, and his Firestrike Extreme single GPU global first place with the RX 6900 XT, and I believe he's using a Liquid Devil Ultimate. And the main thing there is that it's a 6900 XT Ultimate. Honestly, I think AMD should have come up with a new SKU name because the chip is different. Like, the 6900 XT Ultimate cards use an XTX-H die, whereas the regular 6900 XTs use a regular, like, XTX die. And the big difference there is apparently the XTX-H chips have a clock gen that goes past 3 gigahertz, which is kind of like, okay, so basically AMD has created K SKUs for GPUs now, which personally, I'm perfectly fine with that because it's like, I'm perfectly happy to pay Intel's K tax. So if we get, I wish it was also accompanied with, like, Intel's level of overclocking support, where, like, Intel gives you voltage, like, that's a topic for another video, I feel like. But yeah, I don't ultimately have the problem with the idea of, like, paying extra for an unlocked GPU, if it's made clear that, like, that's a thing, which, yeah, I'm not really a fan of the fact that, like, the new chip actually shares the old name, unless the plan is to slowly phase out the original XTX die completely and make all 6900 XTs with an XTX H die in the future, which could actually happen. Right, I can't really think of a good reason to keep manufacturing XTX dies if you're also making an XTX-H. Assuming that, like, the main difference there is just, like, a clock gen that can go to higher clocks. It's like, why would you keep making both of them? Just make one and then use the better die for everything, which would also sort of explain why there's no new GPU name. And anyway, yeah, so if you have an Ultimate, you can go over 3 gigahertz core clock. So for the 3006 here, which that's a peak clock, that's not average clock. Max had to set 3030 in the drivers. He had it cooled down to minus 77 degrees with phase change, which phase change on GPUs is just, like, the most awkward thing ever in terms of, like, getting it mounted. Which is, like, you can really see it here. This is probably one of the worst looking setups I've seen for GPU phase change, because it's always, like, you can see how the suction line for the I don't actually know the terminology for the different components of phase change cooling setups, and I believe that's actually a cascade, but that's just, like, two-stage phase, like, that's multi-staged phase change. So you have, like, one phase change cooler cooling another phase change cooler, which then cools your hardware, or potentially even 3 of them or 4 of them. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, and the thing is, ultimately, like, it doesn't matter how many stages your cooling system has. The final connection to the GPU is always going to just be absolutely horrible because you've got this massive tube that just, where is it going to go? So yeah, so he's on a riser to like get the card attached to the cooler. He's using an Elmore Labs EVC2 for voltage control. Apparently, if you don't change the core voltage, the 6900 XTs just don't scale with low temperatures. So going from, like, water cooling down to minus 70 degrees just doesn't make a difference in terms of the clocks you can run until you start raising the voltage, which is pretty interesting. Yeah, so he has the EVC2 on there. For the voltage control, and that's made by Elmore Labs. I'll try remember to leave a link down in the description. Great little controller, has support for a ton of digital voltage controllers out there. So if you have, like, it supports CHL 8228s, 8225s, IR 35217s, XDP 132G5s. It supports, I believe, also 3567Bs, a bunch of the rebranded Asus controllers, UP9512, which I'd still say you'd probably want to hard mod a 9512. It also supports, like, the MP2888, MP2884, I believe. And if there's a controller that isn't supported, you can actually just kind of ask Elmore to try add support for whatever controller it is that you're trying to volt mod, assuming it's digital. Because, yeah, this thing is just awesome for that. Because if the controller is not digital, then like there's no software support you can add. If it's an analog controller, like you just got to go fiddle around with resistances and that's kind of it in terms of control functionality that you get. Um, but yeah, so EVC2 for voltage control. And then the 5950X at 5.2 gigahertz, also on phase change, which that is actually just a straight up regular like single stage, I believe that minus 42 degrees Celsius right there. Chip's running at 5.2 gigahertz. He's using the Crosshair 8 Hero, not the Dark Hero, just the regular Hero. Um, and yeah, also you can see that the GPU temperatures is completely bugged out. Apparently the hotspot managed to go positive during the run. Like looking at that gap right there, apparently the hotspot managed to go ever so slightly positive, which makes sense. Like the hotspot normally, like especially once you start raising the voltage, the hotspot is gonna get really hot, because that's obviously like the hottest part of the entire chip. Though only a max power draw of only 325 watts, which is yeah, honestly kind of low. Like a lot of cards, when you take them even a little bit sub-zero, you end up like with completely stupid amounts of power consumption if they scale with voltage enough. Which, yeah, I guess this didn't then. Um, yeah. Anyway, awesome score from Max, and I would imagine that we should see a 6900 XT Ultimate like break 35,000 points overall pretty soon, and maybe even and maybe 36,000 points is possible if like it gets figured out how to run these cards at really low temperatures, because Max has been complaining about like the card, like if you cool the card down too much, like it starts black screening, artifacting, like something stops working in the chip, which is pretty normal. Like it's honestly kind of weird how most NVIDIA, like a lot of NVIDIA GPUs, just kind of work all the way down to full pot temperatures. Whereas on the AMD side, once you go below minus 65 degrees Celsius, it's like anything can happen. Your PCIe, like there's a lot of AMD GPUs where the PCIe interface, like you need to drop it down a speed, because if you're at PCIe say so like 7000 series AMD, if you're a PCIe 3.0 and you go below minus like 75 degrees Celsius, the card stops working. If you run below like if you get down to minus 100 and keep pushing lower, the card eventually just stops working. And so there's like a bunch of weird voltage adjustments that you need to make the cards function at those really low temperatures, though there's no fix for the PCIe speed thing. So that's the thing with like it's kind of interesting. With some hardware you can just kind of take it all the way to full pot. You don't really have to worry about anything. There's no weird voltage settings that you need to do. Whereas with a lot of and then there's a lot of other hardware where it's like it either A, just doesn't run at full pot at all and there's nothing you can do about it, or it does run at full pot but you need to like tweak every single voltage on the damn thing so that it still functions at really low temperatures. And it looks and like initial and so far it seems to be that the 6900 XT is in like that group of hardware where it's like, yeah, you're probably going to have to adjust maybe like things worth trying, messing with PCIe speeds, messing with the SoC voltage rail, VDDCI voltage rail, memory voltage rail. I don't necessarily think the memory is getting too cold. But it might just be like the memory controller being like, oh, I'm too cold now. Artifacts. We're gonna stop rendering things, because the thing is, like, I can get the card to like artifact and black screen at ambient if I just set the memory clock high enough. So it might just be like, oh, the memory controller gets too cold and starts throwing errors. So um, with a higher voltage it might still function at low temperatures, or just the higher voltage might heat up the memory controller enough to keep it from getting like to keep it above that point of being too cold. There's also like other minor voltage rails on the card, which unfortunately the EVC2 can't control because those are like really dumb rails. Like there's a 1.8 volt rail for the BIOS, there's a 0.6 volt rail for, I believe, the display drive. And yeah, so those are all potentially things that might need to get modded in order to get these cards to function at really low temperatures. And I was kind of hoping that's like what the 6900 XT OC formula would bring, like a fully digital 6900 XT where you can control every single voltage on the board. But instead it looks like ASRock has never seen a GPU LN2 pot, because that, like, I'll do a PCB breakdown of the 6900 XT OC formula, mostly because I was strongly considering buying that card and then I ultimately didn't. I bought a like Red Devil Ultimate myself. And then I saw the review from Tech Power Up, and I must say, like, whoa, I really dodged a bullet by not buying the OC formula, because damn, that PCB is just like, I have no idea what they were thinking, but they weren't thinking about extreme overclockers when they designed that card. Luckily, Power Color apparently was, or at least mostly was, because they didn't do anything super awkward with like the VRM layout. Anyway, yeah, congrats to Max on the Firestrike Extreme top score, and hopefully he figures out how to get that card to run at even lower temperatures properly, because there should be room in there. I mean, he himself is saying that his CPU is not working very hard, so this is basically just pre-testing, right? Like, yeah, because not everything just works when you take it sub-zero. There's a lot more fiddling around to do when you're at really low temperatures potentially. And then there's things like the AM, like then there's FX CPUs, which do just work at low temperatures. Like those have to be the easiest chips to run ever. Anyway, or well, easy. They're easy enough to get to low temperatures. Maxing them out is a bit of a different matter. But anyway, next score we have OGS reclaiming the 3D Mark Port Royal top score from Lumi, and yeah. This right here, like the crazy thing about this is apparently this was a 4 hour like full pot session, which is quite the achievement, because from what I've heard, 3090s like to just like destroy thermal paste in roughly 30 minutes. So being able to run the card at full pot for 4 hours without having to redo anything, like without having to tear down and redo the like mount, is really impressive. And then of course the score itself is absolutely ridiculous too, like 2.83 gigahertz on the core with 1470 on the memory almost. So yeah, just taking the top score from the KPE, and I believe OGS is still running that very first 3090 they got sent by Galax Hall of Fame, by Galax. So yeah, like I heard I've heard some rumors that like there's multiple 3090 that multiple 3090 Hall of Fame cards were binned, but GPUs currently are so rare that I don't believe anybody is doing any GPU binning. Except maybe some of the really, really big manufacturers for like, because just getting a 3090 at all is difficult these days. So obviously this isn't like some awful bin card, but yeah, it's not like they're sorting through hundreds and hundreds of chips to assemble the Hall of Fame GPUs with, because yeah, there's just not enough chips to do that. But yeah. So like the most impressive part to me is that like that frost buildup, which is like, yep, that definitely ran for 4 hours. Because if you run a 30-minute session, you're not getting that kind of ice buildup around the LN2 pot. Also, you can see they're running a heater on the back of the GPU. I believe that's 2 GPU heaters. Like that looks like one heating element over here and then another heating element over there. And that's because the memory actually doesn't like being super cold, so you need to heat up you need to cool down the GPU and keep the memory warm, because otherwise it just doesn't, like, you can't run the same clocks otherwise. Um, and yeah, unfortunately, I don't know much about running 3090s, like myself, and just I don't bench NVIDIA very frequently either. I've never run Port Royal, but yeah, like this is definitely one of the benchmarks that's seen sort of the most competition, as you can see from all the, like, yeah, like this is very competitive. Actually, yeah, I think that's way more LN2 scores than I think the 6900 XT has. So there's been a hell of a lot of like sub-zero competition on the 3090 in Port Royal. So yeah, being at the top of that ranking is quite the achievement. And then, of course, if you figure out how to run your GPU really fast for one GPU benchmark, you can probably do the same thing for another. And so we have Unigen Superposition 8K Optimized, also from OGS, another top score. I don't think it's quite as, yeah, slightly less competitive benchmark, because it's like 3D Mark is just more popular in general than a lot of the other benchmarks out there. But yeah, apparently this is heavier, or at least a longer benchmark, because the core clock is lower. Yeah, also just a very impressive score that, you get first place. But that's kind of like if you figure out how to do, like, it really is. Like, if you figure out how to be first in one benchmark, you've probably figured out how to be first in most of them, assuming that they're all, like, really GPU heavy, which these are, because you can see that they're running just a 10900K at, like, 5.4 gigahertz for both of these scores, which, in the grand scheme of CPU performance is not exactly that fast. So yeah, but still a very, very impressive results from OGS. And the OGS is actually two people. It's not one person. It's a two-man team, and both of them are very, very capable extreme overclockers. So yeah, congratulations to them on first place Port Royal and first place Unigent in superposition. Anyway, next we have Safe Disc again. He's going to be making very regular appearances in these roundups, I feel like, because yeah, he works at Asus ROG, and he puts out massive scores this time, and he posted again like many scores this like last week, but I chose this one specifically because of the temperature that it hit. So this is a 10980XE, right? Intel's 18 core, and he's running Y-Cruncher on it at 5.3 gigahertz. And in the last round, like in the last score roundup, I talked about Y-Cruncher. This thing is insanely hot. This is like Linpack posing as a benchmark. It's very memory speed intensive, which is why you can see like 4100 CL16 instead of, like 3200 CL12 is like, no, you want memory bandwidth. It's not so much about latency. And then the CPU is only doing 5.3 gigahertz, and yet it managed to hit 37 degrees Celsius. And yeah, Linpack is, Y-Cruncher is really freaking hot. Just insanely, insanely hot. So yeah, like I really wish we had a power reading for this run because it's got to be in like the 1,000 watt, like well over 1,000 watts. It kind of looks like he's running two power supplies at the same time, maybe. Doesn't the motherboard only have two 8-pins? Or does it? I think, actually, no, this one has three, doesn't it? Oh, yeah, two 8-pins and a 6-pin. So yeah, apparently, like, that is actually necessary for this benchmark. So yeah, so this is just a ridiculous score where it's like just the amount of power the chip is pulling. And admittedly, like part of the reason that the temperature gets so high is that you can't actually run Skylake X chips at full pot. They cold bug usually at around like minus 110 to minus 120. But the thing is, that still means like you're getting like 147 degrees Celsius, like 147 degrees temperature delta, right? Like you're going from minus 110 to plus 37 or minus 120 potentially to plus 37. So like the amount of heat that CPU has to be producing to get that kind of like, because basically what sets the difference in temperature between the chip and the base of the LN2 pot is just like the thermal resistance of like the liquid, the solder and the IHS and then the thermal paste, and so yeah, it's like that you like so in order to get such a massive thermal delta, you need to throw a lot of heat at the chip. Like the chip has to be producing an absolutely stupid amount of heat. And so for that reason, yeah, I think this is just like a ridiculous score because this has to be one of the hottest benchmark. Like, no, it's not one of the hottest. This is straight up the hottest benchmark. And this has to be like one of the most power hungry single CPU runs on HWbot. I'd love to see the power reading on this. Like, it has to be well north of 1,000 watts. I think the only thing that could compete with this on power consumption is the 28 core Intel chip, which actually has anybody run Y-Cruncher on that? Like, seriously? Yeah, nobody's run Y-Cruncher on that seriously. Hey, if somebody, yeah, like, somebody needs to run this on Sub-Zero. I want to see what this does. Yeah, because it's 100 degrees load, of course. But yeah, so 10980XE is insane. And I was originally planning to get one of these before I decided to get a 6900 XT. I wasn't necessarily planning to run Y-Cruncher on it though, because yeah, it's very, very hot. Anyway, next we have some far more reasonable hardware for global scores. Kikun 31, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, and his Core i3-7350K at 5.7 gigahertz. This is just on a single stage phase change, which that is a... Oh no, it's 5.7 7350K. Yeah, okay, no. I was like, wait, that has to be really cold. No, no, it doesn't. It's a 7350K. Maximus 9 Apex motherboard, and this is the dual core top score for Pcmark 10 Express. And the interesting thing about Pcmark 10, like kinda, I don't know, is that it's like a productivity and office benchmark. So it benefits from having a fast SSD, like a lot. So this is one of those benchmarks I'm never gonna run because it's like I don't have any fast SSDs. They seem like a waste of money. Um, but yeah, still a really impressive score because it is a like CPU benchmark combined with I guess SSD benchmark, though. Oh no, yeah, he has to be running maxmem for that because that's 38, 66, 12, 12, 12, 28, 22, 20, 220 TRC. Yeah, so that's maxmem. GPU is running at stock, so apparently it doesn't care about the GPU, but that makes sense because as far as I know, it's supposed to be like an office productivity benchmark. So I don't know why it would be like super, GPU and like it shouldn't really be super GPU intensive. So yeah, this is a cool score in a benchmark that I know very little about because like why would you run like benchmarks that require SSDs? What is this? Actually actually somewhat practical hardware configurations, except not really because that's a 7350K, which it's like it's a dual core cool chip. Like the thing is, from a competitive overclocking standpoint, the 7350K is actually really cool because it's like the fastest dual core CPU ever made. And so it just like in the dual core benchmark categories, it's like, well, you need a 7350K because there's really no other CPUs that are better. So anyway, still, congratulations to Kikun on that score because yeah, it's a global top score. Admittedly, in a benchmark that's only recently gotten added to like the main rankings, as in it actually gets points. Um, and so, as you can see, there's not really been a ton of competition on it just yet. Though apparently it seems to be, yeah, like I guess like the SSD thing is a big deal here. Though, admittedly, he's also running the highest CPU frequency, so it's a combination of things. I've never run the benchmark, so unfortunately, I don't know too much about it other than like, yeah, apparently having an Optane Intel SSD does help a lot. Um, so, anyway, that's the global scores for last week that I thought were really cool. And now let's take a look at hardware scores, and we're going to start it off with Bones and his 8.3 gigahertz FX8320 Super Pi 1 million run. This isn't a validation; he's actually running a benchmark. Now, to be fair, CPU-Z validations are actually sometimes like depending on which version of CPU-Z you're using, you can potentially end up in a situation where like SuperPi runs and then you go to save the screenshot and it crashes. Because or you go to save like a validation file and the validation process crashes, whereas running SuperPi is fine. Um, but yeah, this score gets into the rankings because one, like first place for an 8320, so the fastest FX8320 ever in SuperPi 1 million, and also 8.3 freaking gigahertz in an actual benchmark, not just for validation. So yeah, really, really impressive run right there. And he's been working on this score quite a bit. Like I feel like I've seen him post a SuperPi 1M with that 8320 in the past that was at similar frequencies but slower, which is why we're looking at this one right now. So, yeah, very, very impressive score run on a Crosshair V Formula Z. Like FX is really like the FX chips are nice in that they're kind of like you don't really need to worry too much about like getting them to full pot, but once you're there, it's so the end result of that is like once you have them at full pot, you can spend so much time just fiddling with settings and configuring things because the chips will just run indefinitely at those kinds of temperatures, and they don't really like break thermal paste or anything, so they're really nice to work with, my experience. But that does just mean like you have more time to really optimize your score compared to some other chips where it's like getting them to those low temperatures is a pain. And especially like chips where you have thermal paste under the IHS, there's a really good chance the thermal paste is just gonna fail after like as a benchmark finishes or as a benchmark starts, and then you need to start all over again. Which is mostly an issue with modern CPUs. Old CPUs don't really do that very much, but and there's also like most old CPUs are soldered. FX is being soldered, of course. So yeah, still a very, very impressive score though, because like you really have to know your like you really have to know your chip to be able to get it to right up against the limit of the clocks it's capable of running. And of course it's downcored because SuperPi is a single threaded benchmark, but like that doesn't matter, right? Like it's still really, really hard. So to like get a run in at 8.3 gigahertz, and also you need to run somewhat optimized memory settings. These aren't like by DDR3 memory frequency standards. This isn't the craziest settings I've ever seen, but FX chips also, you don't really see FX chips running the best memory settings, like the highest frequencies or the tightest timings of any DDR3 platform anyway. So yeah, also that uncore frequency is way up there, 4.3 gigahertz uncore. Damn. So yeah, so that's the CPU Northbridge clock on the FX8320. So yeah, very, very impressive score with the 8320. It's a shame that FX8320s are like way too expensive on eBay. Like for some people, well, for some reason, people are willing to pay way too much for old FX8 cores. Like they're fun to benchmark on LN2, but I refuse to believe that most of those people are buying them for that. Because for anything else, they're really slow. Like they're honestly kind of garbage. Like I'd rather have a like Haswell i5 than an 8320. But anyway, yeah. So congratulations to Bones on that SuperPi 1 million run. And let's move on to the next score, and we've got Salty Croissant with a R9280X top score in 3D Mark Firestrike. He is being kind of carried by that 5900X, but he's also really pushing that GPU hard. It's running 1375 core clock, 1750 on the memory. You can mod the memory timings on 280Xs quite easily, so I'm not sure if he's doing that. Maybe he should be. If like he really should be, though I don't think he has much in the way of competition in this ranking. Oh no, there's Pulse. Well, we can just look at the GPU score. The thing with AMD GPUs is a lot of the time, if you just bench on newer drivers than somebody else, like if you just bench on newer drivers than the last person to have the top score, a lot of the time you'll beat them, assuming you can reach similar clocks. So yeah. Anyway, let's take a. Yeah, this is a really old score. No, those drive. Oh no, old like Windows 7 stripped down to its limit. So yeah, but so he's beating him on GPU score. Also, he's destroying him on combined, which combined is like that's the thing that's like combined score in Firestrike with old AMD GPUs massively benefits from like GPU memory performance. So yeah, he's got to be running modded memory timings because you don't get a gap like that on somebody running 1883 memory by running 1750 unless you're running much better memory timings. So yeah, I'm a big fan of that. Also, where's the 7970, dude? Like, nice rig, nice collection, but like show the card in the bloody system. But yeah, also he's chilling that card, which that's kind of, well, no, for chilled water cooling, I guess that's okay. That's not really something I run. Like I normally run air or like air, very rarely water, well, air, water, or like subs or like straight up dry ice or liquid nitrogen. I don't really run, like I don't have a water chiller, so I don't run chill water. But yeah, very, very solid score, and he really pushed that card. So he gets into the roundup for this week, and also, having a 5900X, of course, helps, because Firestrike really likes the new Ryzen chips for the physics score. What motherboard is he on? He's on an Impact. You should be able to run more FC... Like, at Ambient, you should be able to run 2000 FCLK for Firestrike, I think. I'm not sure. Like my 5900X will go all the way up to like 2133 FCLK. Now, admittedly, at that point the performance sucks, but at 4000 it's fine. So I don't though I don't know what kind of like variance there is in the FCLK quality because it's like I have one chip. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe this chip is just like really not a big fan of high FCLK, or it can sometimes be affected by the BIOS that the motherboard is on. That limits your FCLK as well. Because yeah, running better memory settings with 5000 series Ryzen's can help squeeze out of quite a few more points in the physics score. Not that he needs them, because you know he is at the top of the R9 280X ranking for now, which is why you normally want to run everything to everything to the limit or be ready, or you can run higher. Like what happens for some rankings is like people will run higher settings like than what they post, and they'll just wait to post the better score later. But yeah, I'm assuming he's not actually doing that. But yeah, great top score for the 280X there. And let's move on. So next we've got okay, that was the one we're comparing against. We've got Phatronics, Time Spy on an RX 590. And the reason this score got into this roundup, look at that card. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. We've got what I reckon, like that is a water block that I've very frequently seen on eBay. So yeah, this is like, you don't need to CX750 power supply. Like what I would consider a garbage motherboard. Um, like this, yeah, actually straight up, like that motherboard is trash. It also looks really dusty. Um, but anyway, yeah, like this score is just like, he really pushed that card, right? Like also he went out of his way to water cool it better. He's also pushing the voltage on it, right? 1.32 volts over there, 1700 core clock. 2275 on the memory, which I believe you need to mod the BIOS to get the, or at least mod the power play tables to get the extra clock range. Yeah, 10600K. The CPU I feel like is chilling. Like 1.3, he has the CPU on an AIO. Like you should be able to push that higher, though the CPU score is already so much higher than the graphics score that it wouldn't really make a difference to the overall score. But yeah, this yeah, like, this is how you should run your card as far as I'm concerned. I really hope he didn't like thermal. It looks like he used thermal tape and not thermal glue, because thermal glue unfortunately has a tendency to be significantly stronger than the solder holding memory chips in place. So then you have to like use some kind of solvent to get through it, because if you try to pull off the heat sinks afterwards, like you're just going to pull off the memory chips. Which is why I'm not a big fan of sticking heatsinks onto cards like this, and instead just prefer to go with a really, really high RPM fan, and hope that the surface area of the memory chip on its own is enough. But yeah, still a very, very solid score, and I just love this setup. I mean, I don't like the power supply, but hey, it's like it, like he's pushing as much as possible on the hardware he's got, and that's what it's about. Though I really think you should get a better power supply. The motherboard isn't even so bad as like these don't have a great like those the green CX PSUs really don't have a great reputation. Though again, that's the 750 watt, and this is probably not pulling anywhere near the maximum capacity of that PSU, so it should be mostly fine. And yeah, very solid score right here. Top score for the RX 590. And yeah, and just on an awesome looking setup in my opinion. So congratulations to him on that first place. And let's take a look at the next score, which is Super Pato Donaldo. Hopefully I think I butchered that. But anyway, I really wish we had a picture of this setup, because triple GTX 580s, you just know it's going to be. Well, he has them on air cooling. It would still, I like seeing the GPU sandwich. Come on, like who doesn't like to see a nice 3-layer GPU sandwich? Triple GTX 580s in 3D Mark 06. Now the interesting thing about 3D Mark 06 is it's very old. So it's it's basically a CPU benchmark, and you can really see that, right? 8086K at 5.6 gigahertz. He's not. I feel like he's taking that really easy on that chip, or his phase change. Oh, wait, 5.8. Uh, what happened? I guess he downclocked for the screenshot? Probably. Um, wait. Do we have... Oh, right, this is before system info, so we can't even check. Oh, that's a shame. But, okay, so 5.8 is like, okay, you're pushing it. Because the thing is... Well, I can't remember, like, 3D Mark 06 is not a benchmark I run very regularly, so I can't remember how heavy the CPU test in it is. But yeah, this is the, like, this is the thing, is like, with a lot of, older cards, or even newer cards, you can run them in old benchmarks where the GPUs are, like, I do believe that's still an overclock for a GTX 580, right? I can't remember what the stock clock of a 580 is. Uh, okay, yeah, that is quite the overclock on a for a GTX 580, I guess. Um, especially considering it's on air cooling and he has 3 of them. Like that really changes what kind of clocks you're capable of running. But yeah, like the thing is with new CPUs, like you get a like what I like about this is you get an excuse to revisit old GPUs, where you can just bench them again with a new CPU, and it's just kind of like, well, I love GPU benching, so any excuse to run like more multi GPU setups is a good thing in my opinion. And so, yeah, I wish we had a system pick, but this is the kind of thing, like if I cared about older benchmarks than Firestrike, then this actually no, I do run Vantage. I do run Vantage. But yeah, 3D Mark 06 is not a benchmark that like regularly shows up on my radar of things to bench. But I think I even have 3 580s or 3 480s. I have 3 of some firm. Actually, wait. No, I definitely have 3 GTX 580s. Yeah. Yeah, I do. So this is something I could totally try get into. But I think this is also one of those benchmarks where like there's a bunch of might be a bunch of tweaks for it. So this might be a lot harder than it looks initially. You might be like, oh yeah, just run the same clocks and like slightly higher clocks and like at least the same GPU clocks and you should be first, right? And then you get to it and it's like, why is my score so low relative to the clocks I'm running? Which is a very regular occurrence for me when trying to run some of these older benchmarks. It's just like, why is my score bad when I'm evidently running perfectly good settings? It's just like, weird software things with these old ones. Anyway, still a very impressive score, right? Well, I'm just a big fan of multi GPU setups, so we had to get one into the roundup because 3 GTX 580s is awesome. And then for the last score, we've got SNQ's Cinebench R11.5 on the Core i5-2320. And I've sort of decided that I'm going to treat locked chips as like a bonus thing where well, I'll try every week to get a locked CPU in because it's just like, it's awesome to see these like super efficiency focused benchmarks rankings where it's like you can't just outclock your opponent by binning more chips or getting a better cooling system, right? This is a top score on air cooling because it's Sandy Bridge. So in fact, if you try to run it sub-zero, it might get really difficult to work with. And he's really pushing that memory. And then of course, you need to get your operating system dialed in and that kind of thing. But yeah, 1140 at CL7, like for Sandy Bridge, that's actually very like that's some very solid memory settings right there. And also 107 BCLK. He's actually beating the guy in second place without having a straight up cork. Well, did this guy not figure out? Like, as far as I know, on the locked Sandy Bridge chips, you had the option to raise the ratio. It's very confusing. Oh no. Okay, he does have a core clock advantage. Oh, because wait, why is it showing 39.5? Oh, I guess the single core boost? Not a thing I bench very frequently. Okay, so, well, anyway, 3.7 apparently. I always get, like, single core, this is why I don't like boost. It's just like, what frequency is it at? It says 3.9 in the screenshot. It's not my fault that anyway, Yeah, but still, a really solid score, great memory settings, right? Beating second place. Most, I'd say, well, some of it's obviously going to be just the CPU clock. Some of it's also going to be the memory settings, right? This is at 810/824 versus 710/727. Though I think, like with a non-hyper-threaded quad core, I really have to wonder how much Cinebench 11 cares about memory speed. Because Cinebench is general, especially 11, like, yeah, I feel like especially 11 was really just like a frequency benchmark, where it's just like whoever managed to clock the CPU the highest would win. Um, that's still, like getting high BCLK to run on a locked CPU or really any Sandy Bridge. It doesn't matter if it's locked or not. Like being able to run high BCLK and like finish benchmarks with it is difficult. So yeah, very solid score here from SNQ. I mean, he's the fastest i5-2320 to ever run Cinebench, R11.5. So yeah, very impressive score right there. He was using a Maximus 5 Gene. Also, you might be looking at that memory setup where it's like, isn't he in the wrong DIMM slots? And DDR3 is weird in that because the frequencies are so low, like if you did this on a DDR4 daisy chain motherboard, you'd be screwed. Like it would clock like garbage. But DDR3 is so low frequency that the like reflection issue that you get if you use the wrong DIMM slots in a daisy chain, and I'm not even entirely sure this board's on a daisy chain. I can't remember when Asus, like for DDR3, Asus eventually switched over from daisy chain topologies to T topologies. And I can't remember which platform that was on. I think it was Haswell, but it might have been Sandy Bridge. In which case, on the Asus T topologies, I think those are actually set up so that the closer DIMM slots are better than the far DIMM slots. T topologies are weird. Like they like T topologies can go have the same DIMM slot bias as a regular daisy chain, or they can be biasless, where it just doesn't matter which DIMM slots you use, or they can be set up to bias towards the nearby DIMM slots if for like which is a thing on some other boards. So yeah, if you did this on DDR4, it's almost universally bad, with the exception of some Gigabyte motherboards. If you do this on DDR3, this can actually work better because DDR3 motherboards be weird like that. And also the lower frequencies I just help with the ability to do things like this. But yeah, so awesome score there from SNQ with that Core i5-2320. And that is it for the HWbot, like the second HWbot score roundup. Yeah, so I guess thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, leave any comments, questions, suggestions down in the comment section below. If you'd like to support what I do here with actually hardcore overclocking, I have a Patreon. There is a link to that down in the description below. There's also the AHOC Teespring store, where you can pick up shirts, stickers, posters, the usual YouTuber merch. And yeah, that's it for the video. So thank you for watching, and goodbye.